We found him a better home, Emily. You'll understand one day. I froze in the doorway, holding a bag of groceries and staring at my stepmother, Denise, like she had just spoken in another language. Where's Max? I asked, heart already sinking. She didn't flinch.
Gone.
A nice couple from Vermont picked him up this morning. The kitchen smelled like baked cinnamon rolls. Sunlight poured through the windows, and my stepbrother Tyler laughed at something on his phone in the next room. Everything looked normal. Everything felt wrong. My dog, my lifeline, was just given away. Without warning. Without a word to me. I gripped the grocery bag so tightly the bread tore through the paper. They had taken the one thing in this world that loved me unconditionally. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. But I did smile just a little, because that was the exact moment I decided I was going to take something from them. My name is Emily Carter, and I'm 23 years old. I work as a veterinary assistant in a small town called Branson Falls, just north of Portland, Oregon. The kind of place where everybody knows everybody and people still wave when they drive past. It's quiet here. Serene even. But if there's one thing I've learned about quiet places, it's that they're the perfect background for silent storms. My dog Max wasn't just a pet. He was my family, my therapy, my constant in a world that felt like it never wanted me. I got him when I was 16, just a few weeks after my dad died. He was a beagle mix, skinny and trembling when I found him near the back fence of our yard. No tags. No collar. Just those brown, trembling eyes that seemed to say, "Please don't leave me." I didn't. Dad had passed from a sudden heart attack while on a business trip in Dallas. He was only 47. One minute he was texting me about a new book he thought I'd like, and the next I was hugging my knees in the hallway while my stepmother made calls. I never saw his body. Never got to say goodbye. Denise moved in just a year before his death. She was younger than him by 15 years, with bleached blonde hair and a tight smile that only appeared when people were watching. She had a son, Tyler, from a previous marriage, and he was the golden child from day one. My dad tried to blend the families, but it always felt like I was being squeezed out like oil floating on water. We never mixed. After Dad's funeral, everything shifted. Denise took over like a queen assuming her throne. She changed the furniture, repainted the living room, tossed old family photos into storage bins. She told me to call her mom, but I never did. I couldn't. Max became my refuge. Every morning before school, I'd walk him by the river trail. Every night, I'd fall asleep with his warm body curled next to mine, his rhythmic breathing like a balm against the emptiness inside me. For years, we were each other's world. I didn't go away for college. I stayed in Branson Falls and took classes at the local community college while working part-time at the veterinary clinic. I eventually earned a full-time position and started building a quiet life, one with routines, small joys, and a sense of independence that no one could take from me. But I still lived at home. Rent-free, yes, but not without cost. Denise reminded me constantly how lucky I was. She controlled the thermostat, my curfew, and sometimes even my food. Tyler came and went as he pleased, throwing parties, making messes, and never lifting a finger. Denise defended him with every breath. "He's just going through a phase," she'd say. "Let boys be boys." She said Max shed too much. Said he smelled. Said he barked too much when guests came over. She started locking him out of the kitchen. Then the living room. I'd come home to find him shivering on the back porch in the rain. Every time I confronted her, she'd say, "If you don't like the rules, there's the door." But I had nowhere to go. No savings. Rent in town was outrageous, and my job barely covered gas, insurance, and groceries. So I bit my tongue and kept to myself. I remember one afternoon, maybe 6 months ago, sitting on the floor of my room with Max's head on my lap. He had this little grunting sound he made when he was happy. I was stroking his ears and said, "You're the only one who really sees me, you know?" He blinked slowly and nuzzled deeper into my palm. Grandma June, my dad's mother, used to say, "Real love sees your bruises and still chooses to stay." That's how Max loved me.
He stayed.
Always. Denise, on the other hand, stayed only for what benefited her. 3 months ago, she started planning a luxury vacation to Cabo San Lucas. A celebration, she called it. For what I never understood. She and Tyler would spend hours at the dining table poring over travel blogs, airline tickets, and resort reviews. I was never invited into those conversations. One evening, she made a snide remark while sipping from a crystal wine glass. Maybe if you'd gone to a real college, you could afford trips like these too. Tyler laughed. Or, at least gotten a real job. What do you even do? Wash dogs all day. I clenched my jaw, but said nothing. I didn't need their validation. I had purpose. My job mattered. I helped save lives, ease pain, comfort the grieving. But inside, the resentment was growing like a weed. 2 weeks before they gave Max away, I came home to find a printed travel itinerary left on the counter. It had their full plans listed: flights, hotel reservations, spa treatments. Total cost? Nearly $8,200. It made me sick. Max had started limping around that time. A vet scan showed mild arthritis, not uncommon for a dog his age. He needed regular medication and softer bedding, which I had started providing. Denise rolled her eyes when I adjusted the thermostat. We're not running a kennel. I came home early from work one Thursday and found Denise yelling at Max for having an accident on the tile floor. He was trembling. I rushed to his side, grabbed a towel, and glared at her. You don't get to talk to him like that. She crossed her arms. It's my house. He's your problem. I cleaned the floor, held Max close, and whispered, just a few more months, buddy. I'm saving. We'll get out. I had secretly started putting money aside. $50 here, $100 there. I opened a separate savings account under a different bank, hoping to afford a small apartment before fall. And then the unthinkable happened. The day Max was taken, I had just come back from the store with his new orthopedic bed. I'd been so excited. I picked a dark blue one with memory foam and soft raised sides for his joints. As I stepped through the door and heard Denise's voice, "We found him a better home, Emily." Something cracked inside me. I dropped the bag. The bed hit the floor with a soft humph. The receipt fluttered onto the tile. I walked slowly through the hallway, past the family photos that no longer included my father, and into my room. His bowls were gone. His leash missing. The corner where he slept, empty. Tyler walked by with a towel around his neck and earbuds in. "Oh yeah," he said, barely glancing at me. "They left like an hour ago. Some woman from Vermont. Said she had a big yard." I stared at him. "You knew?" He shrugged. "It's not like you were doing him any favors. Dog was limping all the time. Denise said he'd be happier." My vision blurred, but I didn't cry. Not yet. That night, I found his last chew toy under the bed. I pressed it to my face and smelled his scent. My chest tightened like it would never expand again. Then I stood, wiped my cheeks, and walked to the hallway closet. Inside was the fireproof safe Denise thought I didn't know the code to. But I'd seen her punch it in countless times over the years. She was careless like that. I opened it. Inside were important documents, passports, birth certificates, and a thick white envelope marked Travel Cash Cabo. I picked it up. Heavy. That was the first night I smiled since Max was taken. Not because I was happy, but because I knew I was done letting them win. I didn't touch the envelope that night. Not yet. I held it for a moment, weighed it in my hands, then placed it back in the safe with a quiet, deliberate calm. This wasn't about impulse. Not anymore. I wasn't going to be the emotional girl they always accused me of being. No. This had to be precise. Measured. Surgical. The next morning, I woke up early and walked the same route I used to take with Max. I half expected him to round the corner, tongue lolling, tail wagging. But the path was silent. Still. The dew on the grass sparkled like shattered glass in the morning sun. I went to work like everything was normal. But nothing was normal. At the clinic, Dr. Nguyen, the head vet, noticed something in my eyes. She didn't ask, just gave me space and assigned me kennel duty, the most isolating and quiet task. I scrubbed crates, refilled water bowls, and whispered to the animals the way I used to whisper to Max. That night, I started planning. I didn't need to steal. I didn't want to steal. What I wanted was equivalence. I wanted them to feel the same hollow punch to the chest I had felt. The same realization that something they loved, something they planned for, something they took for granted, was just gone. I spent a week researching. Their flight to Cabo was scheduled for Friday morning, 2 weeks away. First class. 5-star resort. Oceanfront suite. A package booked through a travel concierge who had already sent them a beautiful itinerary complete with restaurant reservations and spa appointments. I also knew Denise had insisted on paying for the entire trip in cash. Credit cards get you in trouble, she'd always say. Which meant no refunds if anything went wrong. No disputes. No cancellations. That envelope was the only thing standing between them and their dream vacation. I started monitoring their habits. Denise usually left the safe open while she was pulling out documents for her business. She ran a local boutique. Tyler never went near it. The moment came one Thursday afternoon when both of them were out at a wine tasting event. I opened the safe, took the envelope, and brought it into my room. Inside was $8,200 in $100 bills.
Crisp. Clean.
Smelling faintly of leather and mothballs. I didn't smile. I didn't laugh. I just felt quiet. I placed the cash into a fireproof lockbox I'd purchased online and hidden under the floorboard beneath my bed. I left the envelope in the safe, but filled it with scraps of paper folded to match the weight. It was just the beginning. Next, I accessed an old shared email account I used to help Denise with years ago. She'd forgotten the password, but I hadn't. I logged in. In there were her booking details, her travel confirmations, even her spa treatments, some of which required deposits. I changed nothing. I didn't need to. But I printed everything. I made copies.
Dozens of them. Dates. Amounts.
Confirmation codes. And then I mailed them to myself. Certified. With tracking. Because when things went south, I wanted proof of everything. 2 days before the trip, Denise started packing. I watched from my bedroom doorway as she carefully folded kaftans and swimsuits into her new rose gold suitcase. "You sure you don't want to come?" she asked, sarcasm dripping from her voice. "I'll pass." She smirked. "Suit yourself." Tyler's already planning the pool party. He walked by at that moment, holding a bottle of tanning oil and flashing his fake white grin. "This trip's gonna be insane," he said. I said nothing, just stared at the suitcase. At the empty spot on the bed, where Max used to lay. At the woman who took him, without so much as a conversation. And I thought about how justice doesn't always wear a badge or carry a gavel. Sometimes it sits in silence and waits. Friday morning came like a stage curtain rising. I stood in the kitchen sipping coffee as Denise rushed in, heels clicking, barking orders. "Tyler, get the passports." "Emily, did you see where I put the envelope?" I tilted my head. "What envelope?" "The travel fund. From the safe." I blinked. "Nope." Her brow furrowed. She rushed to the safe, opened it, and pulled out the envelope. I watched her fingers squeeze it, her confusion blooming like a bruise. She tore it open. Paper scraps fluttered to the floor like confetti. "What the?" Tyler stepped into the room. "What's going on?" Denise's face turned white. "It's gone. The money is gone." He looked at the papers, picked one up. "Is this a receipt?" She was already on the phone with the travel agency. "No, I did not authorize a cancellation." Wait. What do you mean you didn't receive final payment?" I took another sip of coffee. "Maybe you should check with your concierge." Denise turned to me. "Did you take it?" I raised my eyebrows. "Excuse me? The money. Don't play dumb." "I haven't been near the safe in weeks." That was technically true. Tyler got loud. "We're supposed to be at the airport in 2 hours." Denise was pacing, dialing numbers, shouting into voicemails. "It's gone. It's all gone." The beauty of it all? The vacation wasn't canceled. They just couldn't pay for it anymore. The agency had never received the final balance. Their suite was released. The flights had been flagged as unpaid. There were no refunds. And I didn't even need to touch the reservations. All I did was remove the money. Denise slumped into a chair. This was supposed to be our moment. After everything I've done, Tyler snapped. You said you hid that money. She shot back. Don't start with me. They spiraled into accusations. Who forgot what? Who should have checked the safe earlier? Who trusted too easily? I just stood there, watching. Like someone observing a building burn down from a safe distance. That afternoon, I went to work like usual. But I took the long way, through the park where I used to walk Max. I sat on a bench and pulled out a photo of him I kept folded in my wallet. It was creased at the edges, worn soft from years of unfolding. I did it, buddy, I whispered. I didn't let them win. Back at home, Denise was still unraveling. She threatened to call the police, to accuse me of theft. I smiled and pulled out the printed copies of everything. The envelope was in your possession. I never had access to it. Maybe you should report it as lost. But you'll have to prove it was ever full. She paused. You mailed these to yourself? Certified. Dated. Tracked. Want to see the receipts? She stared at me like she'd never seen me before. You've changed. No, I said. I just stopped letting you walk over me. The next morning, Tyler left early. No goodbye. No explanation. I found an empty suitcase in the hallway and a note that read, I'm staying with Chase for a while. You're both insane. Denise barely came out of her room. I started moving my things into storage that weekend. One box at a time. Quietly. Without drama. Just like I'd planned.
The money?
I didn't spend a dime of it.
Not yet.
I opened a new bank account. Deposited the bills through an ATM over several days. I printed a label and attached it to the envelope I'd kept. Value is not always visible. I left it on Denise's dresser before I walked out the door. And as I closed it behind me for the last time, I felt the air shift. Not like victory, more like freedom. The weekend after I walked out, the silence hit harder than expected. Not regret. Not guilt. Just space. The kind of quiet you don't realize your soul was starving for until it wraps around you like a warm blanket. I had moved into a modest studio apartment just 2 blocks from the clinic. It wasn't much, bare walls, secondhand furniture, and the faint scent of paint, but it was mine. No curfews. No cold stares. No stepping around people who looked at me like I was a burden. I still hadn't told anyone what I did with the money. Not Dr. Nguyen. Not Marla, my coworker at the clinic. And certainly not anyone from home, though I doubted Denise would even speak to me if she ran into me in town. But Branson Falls was small. The kind of town where secrets bloomed fast and bloomed wide. So it didn't take long before whispers started drifting my way. She took the money. She set them up. She robbed her own family. Family. What a funny word. I had stopped using it months ago. One afternoon at the grocery store, I spotted Denise in the next aisle. She looked thinner, older. Like someone had drained the color from her. She clutched a pack of lettuce and stared into the distance like it didn't make sense. Her cart was half empty. I almost felt bad. Almost. But then I remembered Max. I remembered that cold day I came home. New bed in my hands, heart full of hope, only to be shattered in the doorway.
No.
She deserved the silence I gave her. Still, it didn't stop the confrontation from finding me. It came from someone I didn't expect. Hey, Emily, said a voice one evening just as I was locking up the clinic. I turned to find Nina Callahan, Denise's sister. Mid-40s. Always dressed like she was heading to a country club brunch, even if she was just going to the gas station. She was standing beside a red Mercedes, sunglasses perched on her head like a crown. Hi, I said warily. Something I can help you with? She stepped closer, lips pursed. Denise is a wreck, she said. She says you stole thousands from her. Is that true? I folded my arms. Did she tell you about Max? She blinked. The dog. I nodded. She gave him away, I said. Without telling me. Without asking. Just gone. Nina shifted. He was old, Em. And Denise said. She lied. I cut in. He was healthy. A little arthritis. That's it. I had it under control. She just didn't want him around. Like she didn't want me around. A pause. Nina sighed. Look, I'm not saying what she did was right. But you took their vacation money. That's not nothing. I met her eyes. And what she took from me was nothing? Another pause. A longer one. She said, softer this time. You always were different. Your father saw it. But Denise, she was always so threatened by that. I let the silence sit. Finally, I said, I didn't steal anything. I just made things fair. She tilted her head. She says you planned it. That you were calculating. I was, I replied. And I don't regret it. Nina didn't argue. She didn't threaten. Just nodded and got back in her car. As she pulled away, I noticed her hesitate before turning out of the lot, like she wanted to say something else. But she didn't. 3 days later, I received a message from Tyler. Need to talk. Meet me at Common Grounds at 6. I stared at the screen for a moment. Tyler? The same Tyler who used to mock my job, my clothes, my love for Max? The same one who stood by while his mother handed away the only creature that truly meant something to me? I should have ignored it, but curiosity got the better of me. Common Grounds was a small cafe on Main Street, filled with mismatched furniture, the scent of espresso beans, and the soft hum of indie music. I arrived 5 minutes late. Tyler was already seated, staring into a cup of untouched coffee. He looked different. Not worse, not better, just older. More still. I slid into the booth across from him. What's this about? He looked up slowly. I didn't know she was going to do it. Do what? Give Max away. I said nothing. She told me after the fact, he continued. Said you were too emotional. That the dog was making the house feel like a kennel. Did you believe her? He hesitated. At first. I sipped my drink. Why did you ask to meet? He looked down, then back up. I just wanted to say, I think I was wrong. About a lot of things. I raised an eyebrow. Is this about Max or the money? Both, he admitted. I was angry when it happened. But then, I started thinking. About everything. About Dad. Our dad. He rarely used that word. You remember that time he took us fishing at Lake Willow? He asked. I nodded. You dropped the rod in the water. Tyler chuckled. He didn't even yell. Just laughed and said, well, that's one less fish to worry about. A pause. He was different, Tyler said. He saw the world slower. Like everything mattered. I didn't respond. My throat tightened. I guess I just wanted you to know, he continued. I'm not proud of how I treated you. Or Max. Are you telling me this because you regret it? I asked. Or because you want something? He leaned forward. I regret it. Another pause. I moved out, he added. Staying with a friend for now. I can't live with her anymore. That surprised me. Why?
She's changed, he said.
Or maybe I just never saw it before. We sat in silence for a while. The cafe buzzed with soft conversations and the occasional hiss of the espresso machine. Then he said something I didn't expect. I'm trying to be better. I looked at him carefully. I'm not saying we'll ever be close, I said. But thank you for saying that. He nodded. You ever think about getting another dog? I smiled a little. Every day. We parted with a brief, awkward hug. As I stepped back into the cold, I felt something shift. Not quite forgiveness, but maybe the first crack in the wall I'd built. Maybe, just maybe, Tyler was finally seeing the damage he'd helped cause. But the biggest confrontation was yet to come. That night, Denise showed up at my apartment. She didn't knock gently. She banged like the building was on fire. I opened the door just enough to see her, arms crossed, face drawn and flushed. We need to talk, she said. No, we don't. She pushed the door wider. I'm not going away. Then I'm calling the cops. Her nostrils flared. You took everything. You took Max. That was a dog. And that, I said coldly, was my entire heart. We stood in silence, the hallway lights flickering above us. I was trying to help, she said finally, her voice breaking. You were becoming obsessed with that dog. It wasn't healthy. What you call obsession, I said. I call loyalty. Something you've never shown. She winced. You really think I'm a monster? I didn't answer. Instead, I said, you didn't just give away a pet. You destroyed trust. You reminded me, loudly, that I was never part of your family. Tears welled in her eyes, but I didn't flinch. She whispered, I didn't know how to be a mother to you. I stepped back. Then you shouldn't have pretended to be. Her voice cracked. I made mistakes. I see that now. Do you? I miss him too. That line hit me like a slap. I stared at her. No, you don't, I said. You miss control. You miss the money. You miss your image. But Max? You never even knew what he meant. She bit her lip, trembling. Can we fix this? I closed the door halfway. We don't need to fix anything. Because this, I said, gesturing between us, is over. Then I shut the door. And this time, I didn't feel an ounce of guilt. The days that followed were oddly quiet. No more messages. No more late-night knocks. Denise retreated into her own corner of the world, perhaps nursing her pride, perhaps waiting for me to fold. But I didn't. I focused on my work, saved every dollar, and kept building the life she never thought I could manage on my own. Still, emotions are never linear. One morning, I woke up and reached for Max out of habit. My hand touched the empty side of the bed. I curled back under the blanket and let the ache rise, let the tears come. Not because I was weak, but because some love is so deep, so genuine, that the hole it leaves deserves its time. The world kept moving. At the clinic, Dr. Nguyen pulled me aside one day. I heard a rumor, she said gently, handing me a warm cup of green tea. Oh, that you made a statement. Took a stand. I chuckled. Is that what they're calling it now? She smiled faintly. I don't need to know the details. But I do want you to know, I'm proud of you. That hit deeper than she probably intended. Thanks, I said, swallowing a knot in my throat. That afternoon, a woman named Cheryl Dunham walked into the clinic. Late 30s, kind eyes, soft-spoken. She had recently moved to Branson Falls and was looking for a new vet for her senior golden retriever, Daisy. As I helped her fill out paperwork, she asked, Do you have pets? The question was innocent, casual. I hesitated, then said, I used to. She tilted her head. He pass away?
No.
Someone gave him away, without my consent. Her face changed instantly, empathy then shock. That's horrible. I nodded. He was everything to me. She looked at me carefully, then said, I actually volunteer with a local rescue group. We help rehome dogs and sometimes reunite them with their owners if something shady happens. My heart stopped. Wait, what? She smiled. It happens more often than you think. People surrender dogs under false pretenses. We try to screen it, but things slip through. My hands started shaking. Would you help me check if Max went through your system? Of course, she said. Hope, sharp and terrifying, bloomed in my chest like a scream I didn't want to let out. We exchanged contact info. That night, I sat on my couch and stared at my phone, thinking of Max's face. His howl when I came home. The way he'd lay his head on my lap when I cried. Maybe, just maybe. A week later, Cheryl called. I think we found him. My breath caught. He was taken in by a rescue group that works with out-of-state fosters. He's in Vermont, but he's safe. The couple that took him didn't know the full story. When we told them what happened, they were horrified. Tears spilled down my cheeks before I could speak. Is he okay? He's doing great. And they're willing to let you have him back. I pressed my hand over my mouth. You just need to cover transportation and paperwork fees. I'll do it, whatever it takes. As I hung up the phone, I looked toward the old shoebox on my shelf, the one where I kept Max's collar, his tags, the baby blue leash with the frayed edges. I'm coming, buddy, I whispered. Just a little longer. But Denise wasn't done yet. The next morning, I received a certified letter. Inside, a formal accusation, claiming I had manipulated and financially sabotaged her and Tyler, that I had violated the trust of our shared household and caused emotional distress, thus entitling her to sue for damages. She was threatening legal action. I didn't panic. I called Megan Holbrook, a lawyer friend of my dad's who had once told me, "If you ever need anything, call me." I explained everything. She listened silently. Then she asked, "Do you have proof you didn't take the money by force or theft?" "I have printed receipts, tracking info, and testimony from Tyler." She smiled.
Good.
Then we let her try. 2 weeks later, Denise's claim was dismissed. No grounds. No proof. Just wounded pride and a paper tantrum. That same day, Tyler texted me again. "She's embarrassed." Said she only did it to get the last word. I didn't respond, because I already had the last word.
And it was peace.
The legal scare didn't shake me. It solidified me. For the first time, I wasn't afraid of Denise anymore. I wasn't afraid of being the outcast or the black sheep. In fact, I had finally accepted that I was the black sheep, and maybe that's exactly what saved me. I continued living quietly in my apartment, building a life from the pieces of my broken past. Max's transport was scheduled for a Saturday afternoon, 2 weeks after Cheryl's call. I took the day off work and cleaned my space like I was preparing for royalty. Because I was. That morning, a white transport van pulled into my building's lot. The moment the doors opened, I dropped everything and ran. And there he was. Max. Older. A little thinner. But those eyes, those beautiful, brown, soulful eyes, recognized me instantly. He whined the way he always did when he was happy, tail wagging like a storm, paws jittering with joy. I fell to my knees. He launched into my arms, licking my face, crying little dog tears of joy. And I cried, too. Full-on sobs, the kind that release pain from places you didn't even know were still wounded. "I missed you," I whispered into his fur. "I missed you so much." The transporter watched us quietly, visibly moved. I signed the papers, paid the fee, and brought him home. Max circled the apartment a dozen times, sniffing every inch, then plopped down on the worn rug beside my bed and sighed. It was the deepest, most satisfied sound I'd ever heard. We were home. A week later, I was at the local farmer's market when I saw Lisa. Lisa had been one of Denise's closest friends. Polished, prim, always in heels. She spotted me first and made a beeline. I braced for impact. But her face surprised me. "Emily," she said warmly. "You look good." "Thanks," I said cautiously. She hesitated. "I just want to say you were right. About Denise. About everything." I blinked. "Excuse me?" "She's been burning bridges left and right," Lisa said, shaking her head. "Everyone thought she was just strong-willed. Turns out she's just mean."
I didn't know what to say.
She told me what happened. Tried to spin it like a theft. But the more she talked, the more I realized how twisted it was. Giving away your dog like that? That was low. I nodded. "She's not used to people standing up to her," Lisa added. "You did. And it changed things. More people are waking up." A strange warmth bloomed in my chest. I wasn't looking for validation, but it felt good to know I wasn't crazy. "Thanks," I said sincerely. She looked over at Max, who was sitting patiently by my feet. "Is that him?" I beamed. "That's Max." She bent to pet him, and he gave her a cautious sniff, then a small wag. "I'm glad he's back where he belongs," she said. "And I'm glad you are too." Later that evening, I received a text from an unknown number. "I'm sorry. For everything. I've started therapy. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted to let you know I'm trying to change. Denise." I stared at the screen for a long time. My thumb hovered over the keyboard, then pulled back. I didn't respond. Not out of bitterness, but out of clarity. Some chapters don't need epilogues. Instead, I took Max for a long walk. The sky was soft with twilight. The trees whispered in the breeze. And for the first time in years, I felt whole. Not because I'd gotten revenge, but because I had reclaimed what was mine. My voice, my strength, my heart. Max looked up at me as we walked, tongue lolling, ears bouncing. I smiled down at him. Let's build something new. And together, we walked into the dusk, not with fury, but with freedom. 3 weeks after Max came home, I noticed something I hadn't seen in years. I was smiling in the morning, not faking it, not smiling out of habit or survival, smiling because I wanted to, because I felt lighter. It was a Saturday, and Max was curled up at the foot of my bed, snoring gently. Sunlight filtered through the sheer curtains, spilling golden warmth across the hardwood floor. I sat up, stretched, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I didn't feel the weight of someone else's expectations pressing on my chest. I made pancakes that morning, something I hadn't done since Dad passed. Blueberry, his favorite. As I mixed the batter, I remembered how he used to hum under his breath in the kitchen. How he never needed to say much to make me feel loved. The silence with him was always safe, always full. With Denise, silence was cold, condemning, a wall. Dad had given me one piece of advice I'd never forgotten. When people show you who they are the first time, believe them. I hadn't. I kept believing Denise would change, that Tyler would grow, that love could fill in what was never really there. But now I believed it. I believed him. Later that day, I took Max to the park where we used to walk before everything went sideways. The wind was cool, the leaves whispering their end-of-summer goodbyes. He trotted beside me with new life in his steps, tail wagging freely, stopping only to sniff the air and chase the occasional squirrel. I sat on the same bench we always used, the one beneath the oak tree with initials carved into its bark. Someone had added new names since I'd last seen it. Life had moved on. So had I. A little girl ran past with her golden retriever puppy on a frayed leash, giggling. Her mother called after her, her voice full of laughter and love. I watched them and didn't feel envy. I felt hope. That evening, Cheryl texted me. Hey, one of the rescue centers I work with is looking for part-time help with intake and emotional recovery. I thought of you immediately. My heart leapt. I replied, I'd love to. Tell me where to be. 2 days later, I walked into the intake center and instantly knew I belonged there. Dogs of all breeds, ages, and backgrounds waited in quiet pens or paced with anxious eyes. Volunteers moved through the space gently, offering treats, soft words, and hope. My job was simple at first, helping with records, restocking supplies, calming nervous arrivals. But I went beyond that. I started learning their names, their stories. I sat beside the dogs who didn't want to be touched, letting them get used to my presence. I sang softly to the anxious ones. I wrote short bios for the overlooked seniors to help them get adopted. The work didn't pay much, but it fed something in me that had been hungry for years. One morning, as I filled Max's water bowl and packed my lunch, I caught my reflection in the mirror. I barely recognized the woman staring back. Not because I looked different, but because I finally looked like someone I respected. Strong, peaceful, whole. But life, of course, wasn't done testing me. It started with a letter. A plain white envelope slid under my apartment door one rainy afternoon. No stamp, no return address. Just my name, Emily, written in Denise's unmistakable cursive. I stood there for a full minute before opening it. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Asterisk, I don't expect you to read this. I wouldn't blame you if you ripped it up. But I needed to write it. I've been in therapy for 3 weeks now. My counselor told me I use control to hide fear. I've spent my whole life trying to shape people into what I needed them to be, not what they are. I did that to you. And it broke something I may never get back. I'm not asking for a relationship. Or even a reply. I just wanted you to know. I see it now. And I'm sorry. Asterisk. I read it twice. Then again. The part of me that used to beg for Denise's approval felt nothing. No anger. No warmth. Just neutrality. And that felt like healing. I folded the letter and placed it in the back of my journal. Not out of sentiment, but out of acknowledgement. Like placing a stone at the grave of something that once had power over me. A week later, something unexpected happened. Tyler showed up at the shelter. I had just finished cleaning the outdoor kennels when I spotted him at the front desk, nervously clutching a coffee cup. He looked better, healthier, clearer in the eyes. "Hey," he said softly. "Hey. I'm not here to start anything." I nodded. "Good. I heard about the work you're doing here. Cheryl told me. Said the dogs love you." I smiled. "They're easier to read than people."
He laughed.
"Fair point." Then he grew serious. "I wanted to tell you something. About Dad." I froze. "What about him?" "He wrote a second letter before he passed. One just for you. Denise found it and never gave it to you." My breath caught. "She said it would only give you false hope," he continued. "But I read it. And it wasn't false. It was real." "Do you still have it?" He nodded. "I brought it." He reached into his coat and handed me a yellowed envelope. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was Dad's handwriting, steady, thoughtful. *Emily. If you're reading this, I've already gone. And I'm sorry I left you with them. I know things were hard with Denise. I know she made you feel small. But you were never small to me. You were the most powerful thing I'd ever seen. You loved like it mattered. You fought for everything. And you reminded me of your mother every single day. This world doesn't always reward the soft-hearted. But I want you to know, it's the soft-hearted who rebuild what's broken.
Keep rebuilding.
With all the love in the world.
Dad, *.
By the time I finished, I couldn't see the page through the tears. Tyler looked away respectfully. "I don't expect forgiveness," he said. "But I do hope, someday, we can coexist." I folded the letter gently. "We already are." He nodded and walked out into the drizzle. That night, I didn't cry out of grief. I cried out of release. All those years I thought Dad didn't fight for me, he had.
He tried.
And Denise had taken that final gift from me. But I had it now. And that changed everything. In the weeks that followed, something began to shift, not just inside me, but around me. People who once avoided eye contact in grocery stores now waved and smiled. Strangers who had heard whispers of that girl who took the money started seeing me as the woman who took back her dignity. And the shelter? It became more than just work. It became a home. One of the dogs, a mutt named Ralphie, with one ear that stood up and one that flopped, was skittish around everyone. Except me. He'd curl against my feet while I worked on the laptop, peeking up at me like he was asking permission to trust again. One afternoon, Cheryl found me sitting with Ralphie in the back pen. "You've got something, Emily," she said. "Some people just volunteer. But you heal." I looked at her, startled. "You should consider starting something of your own. Therapy dogs, maybe. Emotional recovery for abused pets and abused people." The idea planted itself like a seed. That night, I took out my journal and wrote across the top of a blank page. "The Haven Project, for souls that need a second chance." It wasn't just an idea. It was a purpose. I spent the next month writing a proposal, gathering testimonials from adopters, building a budget with help from Dr. Nguyen and Cheryl. And then, I submitted it to the Branson Falls Community Renewal Grant, a fund reserved for residents who wanted to start nonprofit initiatives for the town's betterment. On the day of the presentation, I wore my dad's old watch and Max's leash around my wrist like a charm. My heart thudded like a drum, but I stood before the panel with clarity I'd never known before. "My name is Emily Carter," I began, "and I'm not here today because life has been easy. I'm here because I've lived through what it's like to lose everything that gives you comfort and to still keep loving anyway." I told them about Max, about the betrayal, about the long walk back to myself. "And that's what the Haven Project is about," I concluded. "It's not about revenge. It's about redemption. For animals and for people like me." They were silent for a long beat. Then the director stood and said, "That's the most human thing we've heard in months." 2 weeks later, I got the call. I'd been awarded the full grant. I sank to the floor of my kitchen and sobbed. Not because I was surprised, but because, for once, I was seen for who I really was. I called Cheryl first. Then Dr. Nguyen. Then, surprisingly, Tyler. He picked up with, "Hey. I got the grant." He was quiet for a second. Then, Of course you did. You're kind of a force now. We both laughed. Do you want help? He asked. I paused. Yeah, I said. Yeah, I think I do. The very next day, we started drawing up plans for the first Haven Center, right here in Branson Falls. A converted barn just outside the city limits, surrounded by open fields and a small creek that glistened under the sunlight. We had a name. We had a mission. And for the first time in my life, I had a brother who didn't just share my blood, but believed in me. The official launch of the Haven Project was set for early fall. We sent out invitations to community leaders, veterinarians, local families, even Denise. Not out of obligation, but out of closure. The invitation was not a white flag. It was a declaration. This is who I've become. Whether you show up or not, I'll still rise. As opening day neared, the barn transformed. Tyler painted walls. Cheryl organized volunteer schedules. Lisa, once Denise's shadow, baked dozens of cupcakes and labeled them with paw prints. And me? I stood in the center of it all, surrounded by love I had built, not borrowed. On launch day, the air was crisp with the first whisper of autumn. 100 folding chairs lined the field. Adopted dogs roamed freely, leashes trailing behind them like streamers. A local news crew showed up, surprising us all. When the time came to speak, I stood on the small wooden platform and looked out at the faces, familiar and new. People I once feared. People who once doubted me. People who now waited to hear what I had to say. Max sat by my feet. I used to think healing meant going back to how things were, I said. But now I know, it means building something new from what's been broken. I spoke of betrayal, of reclaiming love, of second chances. And when I finished, the crowd stood and clapped, not just politely, but with sincerity. As people milled around afterward, I noticed a car pull up at the edge of the field. Denise. She stepped out slowly, dressed plainly for once. No pearls, no armor, just a woman holding a folded lawn chair. I walked over. She didn't speak first. She waited. So I nodded. She took a breath. I don't expect you to want me here. I didn't invite you for me, I said. I invited you because I don't carry hate anymore. A flicker of something passed through her face, shame, maybe, or grief for what she'd lost. I saw the article in the paper, she said. You've done something real. I have. Your father would have been proud. I studied her, then nodded again. Yes, he would have. She looked down. I don't expect to be part of your life. You aren't. She flinched. But you're welcome here today, I added. As a guest. Nothing more. She nodded, unfolding her chair at the back of the crowd. That evening, after the guests had gone and the dogs had dozed off, Tyler and I sat on the porch with mugs of cider. You think this will last? He asked. The center? No. This version of us. I thought about it, about the fractures still healing, about the honesty we'd finally found. I don't know, I said, but I think we've both changed enough to give it a real shot. He nodded. We clinked mugs. Max lay between us, head resting on my foot. As the sky deepened into stars, I looked out at the barn glowing under string lights and realized something powerful. I wasn't the girl who got left behind anymore. I was the woman who took the pain, turned it inside out, and planted a garden in its ashes. And as I watched volunteers laugh in the distance and a new family sign adoption papers on the porch, I knew this wasn't revenge. This was redemption. 3 months later, the town of Branson Falls looked different, not because the streets changed or the buildings were repainted, but because something subtler had shifted. The community felt warmer, softer. People lingered a little longer at farmers' markets. Neighbors waved more. There were more dogs than ever, each with their own rescue story, and many of them traced back to the Haven. But the biggest transformation was inside me. I had finally stopped bracing for pain. I no longer entered rooms waiting to be judged. I didn't shrink at the sound of Denise's voice in my head or flinch at memories of Tyler's silence. The ghost of my past still existed, but it no longer held the power to haunt me. Max and I had developed our own morning ritual. We walked down to the edge of Blueberry Creek at sunrise, where the trees leaned over like they were whispering secrets to the water. I'd throw a stick. He'd chase it. Then we'd sit on a mossy rock while I sipped coffee and plan the day. Sometimes we didn't talk at all, because healing doesn't always come in loud declarations. Sometimes it comes in silence you no longer fear. One chilly October morning, I sat with Max curled beside me and opened a letter I'd been carrying around for weeks. It was from the State Board of Community Renewal. They had reviewed the early success of the Haven and wanted to nominate it for a statewide Community Impact Award. If selected, we would receive expansion funding and mentorship from larger nonprofits across the region. I folded the letter and smiled. Not because I needed more success to feel whole, but because it confirmed what I already knew. This work mattered. I mattered. Back at the barn, the team had already started prepping for our holiday adoption festival, a cozy event with cider, hay rides, and pup costume contests. Ralphie, the once skittish mutt, had been adopted by an elderly couple who visited every Friday to update us on his progress. Lisa had taken in 2 bonded senior chihuahuas. Even Cheryl, who swore she had too many dogs already, ended up keeping a 3-legged shepherd named Luna. And Tyler? He'd started a part-time animal transport business. He worked closely with shelters across the region and had slowly gained a reputation for being reliable and gentle. He still had moments of withdrawal, but we were rebuilding quietly, authentically. One day, while reviewing some paperwork, I saw him sketching in a worn notebook. I peeked over. "You draw?" He shrugged. "Used to. Forgot I liked it." I grinned. "You should hang some of those in the Haven lobby."
He scoffed.
"No one wants to see that." "I do." He smiled, and that small gesture said more than 100 apologies. I had chosen grace, and grace had returned to me tenfold. But the most surreal moment came one Sunday afternoon in November. Max and I were sitting under the big oak behind the barn, the same place where I once buried my grief, when a small group of teenagers arrived, each holding dogs they'd recently adopted. They looked nervous, awkward in their hoodies and hand-me-down sneakers. One girl, probably no older than 16, lingered near me. "Hey," she said, soft and unsure. "You're the one who runs this place, right?" "I am." She shifted. "My foster family said you used to have kind of a rough time." I smiled gently.
"Yeah,
I did." She looked down at her terrier mix. "I ran away 3 times last year." I waited. But then my social worker made me volunteer here. I didn't want to come. I nodded. "That tracks." "But then I met Benny," she said, petting her dog's ear. "And he made me feel like I wasn't broken." I felt a lump in my throat. "You're not," I said quietly. She looked at me, eyes glistening. "Neither are you." And just like that, everything I'd fought for, every sleepless night, every tear, every moment of rage made sense. This wasn't just my redemption. It was a ripple, and it had reached her. The first snow came early that year. Thick flakes dusted the rooftop of the Haven, turning the field into a pristine canvas. Max loved the snow. He bounded through it like a puppy, kicking up powder and chasing his own tail. His joy was contagious. Even the most traumatized dogs wagged their tails when he pranced by. Inside the barn, we'd decorated for the holidays. Strings of soft yellow lights hung from the beams, mismatched stockings labeled with dog names lined the walls, and a small fake fireplace flickered in the corner. Volunteers brought cookies. Visitors brought blankets and supplies. Someone even donated a custom wooden sign that read, "Healing starts with one brave heart." Every time I passed it, I paused. It reminded me of Dad. One night, after closing, I lit a candle in the corner of my office and opened his last letter again. I read it slowly, tracing the words with my fingers like they were relics. His voice echoed in my mind, not just the words, but the warmth in them. "Keep rebuilding." And I had. Brick by emotional brick. I had rebuilt my life into something that didn't just serve me, but others too. I had broken the cycle. Not with vengeance, but with vision. That same week, I got a message from Denise. I'm leaving Branson Falls. Starting over out west. Thank you for not destroying me when you could have. I've begun to understand that the person I hated most was myself. Be well. I stared at the message for a long time, not because I was tempted to reply, but because I wasn't. There was no more war inside me. No bitterness. No scoreboard. Just peace. The next morning, I arrived early at the Haven. The air smelled like frost and pine. Ralphie was curled in his bed by the fire, tail thumping as I entered. Tyler was already there, sketching a new flyer by hand for our winter event. He looked up. Hey. Morning. He gestured toward his drawing, a whimsical poster with cartoon dogs in scarves and little speech bubbles that read, "Warm hearts, cold noses." I laughed. That's adorable. Thought it'd bring people in.
It will.
He leaned back. You ever think we'd end up here?
I thought about it.
About how far we'd come. No, I admitted. But I think Dad did. We were quiet a moment. Then he said something I'll never forget. You forgave me before I deserved it. That changed me. I met his eyes. You changed yourself. I just stopped holding you back. We sat there a while longer, two siblings no longer bound by rivalry or resentment, but by choice. Real, vulnerable, imperfect choice. Later that week, the Haven received its first out-of-state visitor. A woman named Monica, who ran a trauma recovery nonprofit in Oregon, had read about us in a local magazine and wanted to tour the facility. She walked through slowly, asked thoughtful questions, and took photos of everything from the feeding stations to the gratitude wall in the main hallway. Before she left, she pulled me aside. I've seen a lot of programs, she said. But there's something different here. I tilted my head. Different how? She smiled. It feels like it was built by someone who truly understands what it's like to feel discarded. And to come back stronger. That night, I told Max what she said as we curled up by the fire. She gets it, I whispered into his fur. She sees me. His tail thumped. And for the first time in years, I didn't just feel healed. I felt whole. By mid-December, the Haven felt like a living, breathing soul. Not just a shelter, but a sanctuary. Volunteers started calling it the Miracle Barn. Not because magic happened overnight, but because it happened slowly in steady, almost invisible ways. A dog who once hid in corners now greeted visitors at the door. A teenager who swore she'd never trust adults again now ran our afternoon check-ins like a pro. And me? I had found something stronger than revenge or survival. I had found purpose. One afternoon, I decided to visit the old house, Dad's house. The one Denise had claimed after the will, the one I'd avoided for so long. Now that she had moved, the property was up for sale. I stood at the gate for a long time. The porch was worn, the garden dry, the wind chimes silent. But the memories were still there. I walked around the backyard. The tree I used to climb was still standing, branches brittle with frost. The swing was gone, but the hook was still in place. I took a deep breath and pressed my hand against the trunk. I'm not angry anymore, I whispered. I made it out. I could have bought the house if I wanted. I had the grant, the income, the credibility. But I didn't want to live in the past. Instead, I called the local women's advocacy group and told them I'd sponsor a portion of the purchase if they turned it into transitional housing for survivors of abuse, especially those with pets. 2 months later, the project was approved. They named it Carter House. I didn't ask for that. But when I saw the plaque unveiled on the front porch, I cried anyway. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't payback, it's legacy. The same day, I visited Cheryl at the main shelter. We sat outside with mugs of peppermint cocoa, watching Luna try to herd a group of puppies in the snow. You've done something rare, Emily, she said. You've changed the shape of your pain. I think it changed me first, I replied. Then I just stopped resisting it. She smiled. You know, I think your dad would have loved it here. I looked around, at the fairy lights, the dog footprints in the snow, the handwritten signs of hope on the barn doors. He's already here, I said softly. That evening, I returned home and opened my journal. The first page still read The Haven Project, for souls that need a second chance. But now, I flipped to the back and began a new page. Volume 2, Restoring the Broken World. Because I wasn't done. I didn't just want to help dogs. I wanted to help people heal their homes, their relationships, their sense of self. And I knew, deep in my gut, that my story was just the first spark. Now it was time to light the way for others. Spring arrived in Branson Falls like a song. Daffodils lined the sidewalks. The air was warm with possibility. At the Haven, we began planting a community garden behind the barn, bright marigolds, tomatoes, even lavender for the anxious dogs. Every Sunday, people from all corners of the town brought seeds, compost, and thyme. It wasn't about the plants. It was about belonging. One morning, while placing mulch around a sunflower bed, I noticed a little boy kneeling beside Max. He had soft curls and huge eyes. I didn't recognize him at first. Then I saw the woman a few feet away. Lisa. She gave me a shy wave. "That's my nephew, Jordan," she said. "He wanted to meet Max." I crouched down. "You like dogs, Jordan?" He nodded, holding Max's paw like it was sacred. "Max likes you too," I said. His eyes lit up. Lisa stepped closer. "I've been thinking about everything. About how many people are trying to start over." I nodded. "What if we created a mentorship program here? Something for teens who want to work with animals but don't know where to begin." My heart warmed. "Let's do it." Just like that, another ripple began. That evening, I stayed behind after everyone left. I sat on the front porch of the barn, watching the sun dip below the hills, Max curled beside me. The sky burned gold, like the whole world was applauding. I thought of everything that had happened since that one cruel day. The betrayal, the pain, the awakening, the rebuilding. And now this. Not revenge, not even justice,
but peace.
a kind of peace that grows roots. I pulled out a folded paper from my back pocket, an old recipe card from Dad. His banana bread. His handwriting still made my heart swell. If life gets too loud, he'd once said, bake something. Feed someone. That's how you fight the dark. So I baked. That night, I made 2 loaves of banana bread, one for the volunteers and one for Cheryl to take home. And as I washed dishes, Max asleep on the rug behind me, I caught a glimpse of myself in the window. Not broken, not bitter, but blooming. It hit me then, how far I'd come. Not just from betrayal, but from the need to prove anything to anyone. I didn't need Denise's approval. I didn't need Tyler's validation. I didn't even need the town to love me. Because I had me, and that was finally enough. As I dried my hands and turned off the lights, I whispered one final thing into the quiet.
Thank you, Dad.
For seeing me when no one else did. The wind stirred the chimes outside. A soft clang. A full circle sound. I stepped outside, Max close behind, and shut the door gently behind me. The stars blinked awake. And in the cool night air, under the vast sky and wide-open future, I walked forward. Not as the girl who was betrayed. Not as the woman who got even. But as the soul who learned how to build again. With love. With grace. And with no regrets.